Hey guys, so I know I've been away for a pretty long time. Sorry, had to take a little hiatus, but I got asked little a curious question. What is Endgame to me? And talking about video games, uh, Endgame is content that tests the state you are in. For example, say maybe in like a video game I used to play, Vindictus, right? There's a boss with I think it's a gnoll with a giant hammer. And back in maybe like 2014 or so, that boss would be extremely difficult to fight solo because of the amount of damage that he is able to do. In that sense, because he was the only boss that was out, if you was able to solo him and beat him without dying and getting his gear, that would be considered endgame. Now, for Warframe, that is very hard to do because DE hasn't necessarily tested its players over the course of its lifetime. So for Warframe's case, maybe people said, okay, well, going to level 9,999, that is endgame, which it's not, because it doesn't, how can I say, test you in any sort of metric. Of course, it tests your weapons, see how much damage your weapons do. But because Warframe hasn't done these tests, they sort of lost control over the player, which is not necessarily good, but it's not too late, technically. Right now, Warframe is trying to contain damage, which is the minor part of the problem. The actual problem is that they're not focused on gameplay. Now, what do I mean by this? Warframe has a beautiful movement system, but they have not designed their bosses around that movement system, which creates this sort of effect on bosses that makes them look like or feel like bullet sponges. Warframe's movement system isn't like other games. Other games restrict your movement. They don't allow you to move exactly how you want to. They literally restrict you to the point where you have to play by their rules. In Warframe, there's still some rules applied, but it's not as drastic. So, in Warframe, the new Archon fights, the Archon fights are very messy. If I was a developer and I said, hey, how can I test the player and see how can I make this challenging? What can the boss actually do? Since the Archons are very, very small, they need to use the map to its advantage. The boss doesn't necessarily have to move a lot in terms of like walking, this, that, and the third. That could be more like a cinematic sort of threatening sort of feel like, oh no, the boss is actually coming towards me. But you could only induce that sort of fear when the boss has done other things that doesn't necessarily attack one player straight up. So for example, in the map where I think this week's Archon is Amar, I don't know if that he could teleport to one location on top of like maybe like the Bolkar ship that he stands on when he first appears, and he swings his little dagger thing and it cuts through the map like a nice wide AoE of like fire just cuts through the map, but you can see the animation cutting through the map, and then he goes to another location, does the same thing, and then jumps down, roars, and a fire AoE ring maybe expands out. Not only does a player have to move to dodge because they'll take heavy damage, but they also have to jump because the ring that's going to be coming from his roar is starting to spread out. They know that it's coming, and maybe this ring ignores prime sure-footed and does maybe 1,000 damage. So if you don't jump, you get one shot. Or if you're a tank, you're you know, you take the 1,000 damage, but you're left with a burn that maybe takes, how can I say it, 5% of your health per tick, and it lasts 10 seconds, and you need like a rolling guard or, you know, an Oberon or someone that could heal to treat your wounds. And then afterwards you can start thinking about the effects. Maybe this attack destroys or reduces your power duration by 50%. Maybe this attack reduces your power strength by, you know, 25%. Maybe this attack ignores prime sure-footed or all knockdown mods and inflicts a slash effect. You know, there's a lot that they can do to punish the player. It's more than just simply saying, oh, if you die, you won't be able to revive. Yes, that's a part of it, but not entirely. Because there's no actual movement, the boss just comes out as a bullet sponge. There's no real danger when fighting it. So if I was a developer and I said, how can I create a boss that would be challenging but fair to the player? I'd say, does it have a lot of HP so that if you're in a squad, it takes a while to complete? We have that. Okay, check. How's the animations? Does the animations not necessarily aim for the player, but aim for the map where the player is standing? If it does not, then we need to change that. Does it have verticality? Does it have a wide range? Does it make a player completely ignore what they're doing and try to get out the way? Does the player notice something else when it moves out the way? Does it notice some spawns coming in? Does it notice that there's another attack coming? And are these attacks punishing for the player, especially players that have a high amount of HP? When it hits, does it hit to kill? Does the fight intensify? Meaning that as the boss gets lower and lower, does it gain new attacks, or the attacks that it has already, does it gain brand new effects? So for example, the X marks the spot attack that I was talking about with the Mar, maybe it gains a sort of lasting AoE where it leaves a trail of fire where those slices cut through the map, and they do a certain amount of damage to your HP when you stand in them. After that, you can start focusing on, you know, the amount of health that it has, mini bosses, so on and so forth, so you could create a whole experience that I would say the current Archon hunts miss entirely. But I know I rambled on for a little bit. This video is getting a little bit too long. I don't want to take more of your time. But if you do want me to make a full video on how exactly I personally would design a, you know, a sort of Archon hunt for Warframe, let me know in the comments. And if you like this video and if you want me to talk a little bit more, like and subscribe. I know my mic is a little bit scuffed, but it'll take some time before I can get a new mic. Alright, y'all have a good day.